to Thursday night. At least it's Thursday night where I live. Kind of flowy, funky, whatever I want to do class. yoga class. I've got a few little goodies around me, and you can gather any or all similar objects, whatever you have at your house. So I've got a fairly long pillow. This one is not too crazy high. A couch cushion or 2 throw pillows would work really nicely in place of this. I've got some yoga blocks. I have a blanket handy, and then I've also got a yoga strap. Now, yoga blocks are pretty specific, but if you don't have those, there's some times where a pillow or a blanket will work where you would put a block in, and then other times where you want something a little more sturdy, like a Tupperware container with a lid on it, or even an upside down sauce pot would work to give you something to kind of press against, so, or a piece of furniture. So you can kind of orient yourself in your space so that if you need a little something to kind of give you more room for one hand, a little longer extension, you can use something else, right? You can hold onto a piece of furniture or the wall or use a block. And then in places where we might be using the block to place the ankle or something like that, then a pillow might be just right. Okay, so I've got those, but I may or may not wind up needing them. A yoga strap, also very specific, but you could use a scarf or a dog leash, a towel in place of a strap. So I'm just going to set these things close enough to me that I can use them when I want to. And I recommend kind of similar ideas because I don't really know what's going to happen tonight. So I come into Thursday night with no decisions made. I just kind of let myself kind of decide how to practice. So we're going to start laying down. I'm going to put this pillow underneath my back so that it lets my chest kind of open up. It feels really nice to me at the beginning of the day after I've been sleeping. It feels really nice at the end of a day after I've been working on the computer for a while. So it just kind of opens up the space around the chest. So that's how we're going to begin. And then I'll show you some options for your legs. Now, if I have something under my back like a yoga block that's really firm, then I want it to be just underneath the shoulder blade, so quite high up. A pillow or a blanket you can get away with being lower down your back. Just make sure it's comfortable for you. So like the first part is get in place and then kind of snuggle your shoulder blades in, see where your pelvis should land, and kind of decide, should I go up a little higher, should I go down a little lower, what's the right spot? If it's really uncomfortable, it's not the right spot. Now you can let the legs stretch all the way out, and this kind of turns into almost like a fish pose, right? So without the head being down, the back bendy shape resembles a fish. If you bring your feet together, it kind of takes a little bit of the lever away, but you get a butterfly. And then you can also rest the feet in constructive rest, and then this really shifts the hip flexors back a little bit and lets it really be just about your chest. So it's up to you how you want to start things out. I'm going to go for the butterfly, and I'm also going to do a little bit of support under the legs. So I'm going to use my blanket rolled up. And that makes it so I can kind of control how spicy, how intense the sensation is in the inner thigh. Oh. And so once we settle in, we just pause and breathe. After a few moments of settling in, it's a really great idea to just kind of bring yourself to awareness of your breath. And for tonight, what I'm kind of trying to allow myself to do is to try to invite in to my practice a sense of sort of freshness or like newness, even though I'm gonna do things I've done probably thousands and thousands of times, in terms of the shapes that I'll make with my body. I want to try to allow myself to really notice how each moment is not exactly the same as any moment I've already had, and instead, like, this next breath that's coming is not the same as the breath before it, or the breath 1,000 times ago, or the breath 100,000 times ago. That each moment is an opportunity to invite in a sense of curiosity, and a sense of wonder, and a sort of new freshness, especially in a time where it feels like the days just run into each other and they're all the same. It's nice to invite in this kind of fresh newness just by noticing each moment. So to do that, I'm gonna become, for the next minute or two, really curious about the breath coming and going. Just notice like what parts of my body respond to the breath. And as each breath comes, what that breath is like. And try not to make any stories or analyze it, but just be fresh for the next experience. Stay for about 4 more breaths. When you're ready, you can change the legs. So I'm gonna take mine out straight. You might bend yours if they've been straight this whole time. And then I'm gonna take this guy out from underneath my back by just rolling to the side and slipping it out. Set that off to the side for now. Now, one of the things that I was noticing as I was breathing is like I felt a little different sensation on the right side than my left side. And so now I've got a little bit of curiosity about that, and without, again, making any stories, judgments, or anything like that about it, because I'll do that later. But instead, just noticing, did it change? And could it have been like just the way I was sitting on the bolster that created that little bit of a difference? And again, that's a story, so I'm coming back. Just noticing. And I'm not noticing that difference now. So it's just interesting to me how, like, even a pose I've done a bunch of times can, if I just pay attention, be very different than the last time I've done a pose. And that's really the idea that I'm kind of trying to approach the practice with tonight, is can I be really fresh, and just like if there's discomfort, I might notice that. I might move to see if I can change that, but without like saying, oh, that's my bad knee, right? Without putting a judgment on it or a label or anything like that. Can I just be present for whatever is coming up, right on? So we're gonna do some shoulder stuff because I'm in love with this right now. So you just need to make sure that you can reach your arms over your head without running into your goods or your wall or your couch or whatever you know, wherever you are. So I'm gonna see if I can kind of create that situation one more. Okay, so then I'm gonna leave my legs like this, which is called constructive rest, and it's just the feet are far enough away that it feels comfortable in my hip for my legs to be in this position, and it doesn't pull on my low back in any way. So then I'm gonna reach through my fingertips, right? So I'm hovering my arms a little bit off the floor, pinkies are down, thumbs are up, stretch out, and then keep stretching away from yourself as you bring your arms all the way up overhead. Just keep reaching, 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 reaching. And then I just come back nice and slow, and I try to feel this kind of changing landscape of shoulder as I go, right? Because I feel this in different parts of my arm, different parts of my shoulder as I move. So we're gonna do 4 of them all together. So just reaching, like right now I notice the triceps kick on to kind of help control the descent. And as I lift my arms there, the triceps start to let go, and now the biceps are gonna control the descent, right? So it's really cool, it's fun. All right, keep going, stretching your arms the whole way. Notice how the upper back shifts, how the neck shifts, how that changes the relationship to your spine. It's fun. This is kind of really interesting unfurling that happens as I get closer to the floor on both sides. There's a lot of activity in the middle, and then suddenly, it kind of softens up a little bit. So all the way back. Alright, so then we're just going to take one arm, lift it up, and give it a shake. Shake it so it feels like the bones kind of rattle, and you can do bigger shakes or littler shakes. Just try to get like a reverberation going. And then where else can I feel that? Let's do more breaths on that arm. And then just let the arm drop. Wherever it landed, you can make adjustments to make it more comfortable, but just notice it as it kind of landed. And then compare it to your other arm, because that's really fascinating to me. This arm feels kind of sparkly, a little effervescent, so let's do the other arm. And I find it really interesting, like I have more control muscularly of my right arm than my left. And again, I could analyze that, but I'm not going to right now. But I do want to just make a note of it. It feels a little bit more interesting to try and shake enough to get a little reverberation in. Two more breaths. And then I'm just going to let that arm drop. And again, pay attention and notice. I like the way my arms feel, almost like they could float. They're so, they feel very light. All right, so I'm going to grab a hold of my right leg, give it a little hug. While I'm holding onto it, I'm going to spin my foot through little circular shapes. Go the other direction. Again, this is something I do a lot of, so can I feel it really fresh and new Do I notice different parts of my foot than I usually do? That kind of thing. And then point and flex. All right, so I'm going to take this leg and stretch it all the way out. So I'm going to put the heel on the ground really lightly and then stretch it all the way out. Just give it a good long stretch. And then I'm going to bring this leg in and curl up toward it. And then I'm going to stretch it out. I want to feel that stretch all the way through that whole side of my body, and then curl in. And stretch it out. And curl it in. So now I'm going to bring this knee over towards my left elbow, so I'm going to do a little twist. And then I'm going to bring the knee towards my right elbow, so it's going to go out like a little butterfly wing. I'm going to stretch this leg all the way out, give it a good long reach, and I just want to compare notes right side to left side, because I haven't done anything on my left side yet. Do I notice any difference? And then I'm going to bring both my knees in. I'm not done yet, but I'm going to be done soon. So bring both knees in, and then I'm going to take this into a twist. So I'm going to take the legs over to the left, so the right leg winds up on top. I usually put a blanket in somewhere so it makes it a little more comfortable, or sometimes a pillow. And I've kind of wrapped my legs around each other a little bit like an eagle, but you could just stack yours, or one leg could go straight and one leg could be bent. And then I've got my chest muscle all kind of stretched out, and I might try, like, does it feel more interesting with the arm lower or up higher? Sometimes I like to just hold still, and then other times I find it really interesting to sort of get a little movement pattern going, and that's feeling kind of nice right now. So I'm kind of letting the hip go this way with my exhale, and then I'm inhaling and kind of rolling it toward the front a little bit. Just, you can play with it either way. Two more breaths. And just bring your legs back. Take a moment just to pause. So I'm going to let the right leg rest, and I'm going to take the left leg in my hands, and then spin my left foot in circles. And go the opposite direction. Point and flex. getting kind of curious, just noticing the details. Okay, so then, letting go. I'm gonna let this leg kind of stretch out nice and slow, kind of riding the floor on the way. Give, a nice big stretch to the front of that hip and then curl straight up. And then stretch it out. Curl it up. Try to let my right leg just kind of go along for the ride. It's interesting sometimes just to see how it responds. So I'm coming to the twist next, so I'm going to the right elbow. And then the next one, I'm going to come over here to this left elbow. And now it's all the way straight. I'm just going to pause for a moment and just notice any changes to the leg itself or even to the relationship between the two. And then I'm going to bring the legs in and take them over to the opposite side. Create a little twist. And again, I might need to make like a few little adjustments just to make it just right. Last time I was really into a movement pattern. I'm going to see if I like that again, but I'm going to be open to the idea of not doing it. And it's really simple. I'm just kind of deepening the twist and letting it go. That's really all I'm doing. Just rolling a little more that way, a little more this way. It's fun to try something different on each side, see what happens. Two more breaths here. And then I'm going to take this leg back to the center. And just pause for a second. Check things out. This is going to be the most exciting part, you guys. Of this little sequence anyway, because we're going to take both the legs up and then you're going to shake them, and the idea is to shake them until it feels like your bones are rattling. I find it easier to shake arms than legs, but I'm getting a little better at the legs. I want, if I could, my toes would be like flippy floppy like my fingers. That's the goal I have for myself. If that's the right word. Oh, I'm not sure that's a goal. Don't give up yet. We're going to try it for about 30 more seconds. Okay, one more breath. Oh, and then let your legs drop. Oh. Whew, that feels so cool when it's over though. my legs feel like they've been in the air conditioning, and it's possible it's because all the blood flow has had a really hard time getting up there, like getting to my toes. But whatever, it feels really cool. My circulatory system might be like, what are you doing? Okay, enough stories about things. I'm gonna come back to just noticing it and feeling it because it feels cool. Oh goodness. All right, yogis. I'm trying to decide what to do next. Oh, I'm gonna roll onto my side for a moment. Okay, so I'm gonna put something under my head, but we're gonna do a little bit of work for the leg. So for the first part of this, I'm gonna use my arm, and then for the second part of this, I'm gonna move my arm out, and then I just want something that'll fit under my head. So I've got this pillow, and this will work just fine. I could also use a folded blanket. So if you want, get a prop and just put it nearby so you can do the same thing. Now, for the first part of this, I'm gonna challenge my core. So to do that, I'm gonna move my leg around a whole bunch, and I'm gonna try to hold my core really still. So we're gonna imagine kind of picking up the bottom waist a little bit so that it engages the transverse abdominis. You're gonna try to keep the hips still and the shoulders still, okay? Now you can put your hand up front for a little extra stability. You can swing your legs forward for a little extra stability. But I'm gonna try to, keep everything lined up so it makes it a little bit more challenging. So we're gonna turn the legs so that I get an external rotation. So that means there's a bone right here on the outer part of your thigh bone. This is the little knob. It's called the greater trochanter. Isn't that a cool name? Anyway, the greater trochanter, I want it to point more like it's pointing down or toward my buttock. That's external rotation. When I internally rotate the thigh bone, it points up a little bit, like it's kind of aiming up toward this corner of the room, okay? So if that gives you a landmark to kind of feel this internal and external rotation. So sometimes I see people turn from the ankle, and so that's why I'm giving you this little bone as a landmark, if you can feel it kind of rotate in and out, okay? So we're gonna start with an external rotation. So it kind of goes into, if you run your hand right there, it goes into the muscle, so it's harder to feel. And then we're gonna spin this leg in a circle and try to not jiggle here, which is the hardest part, is to keep the center part not jiggling. So we're gonna do our best. We're gonna hug in through the sides of the waist, draw the abs in. 2 more. Okay. Now, that creates a little bit of work for these external hip rotators and my abductors. So now I'm gonna do the internal hip rotator, which lives right here, and then also the adductors, the inner thigh muscles. So we're gonna rotate the leg down. You might also feel it out here incidentally. And then we're gonna circle the leg. And I find it more difficult to circle with the internal rotation. So I can feel that lump right there on my thigh bone. And I'm just trying to circle and hold my belly stable. It's a little harder for me to do it on this one. I don't have as big a range of motion. But now I can feel my inner thighs kind of firing up. And so that's really interesting, right? So hug in, 3 more, 2 more, last one, and then bring the leg down. Now, we're gonna do a similar thing, but we're gonna do it as a kind of movement pattern. So I've got my feet in the air, I've got my knees together, I'm gonna open my knees like that so it's like a butterfly, but then I'm gonna kick this butterfly out, put the feet back, and then bring the knees together, okay? So open, kick, come back, close. So that's the movement pattern. And so I'm using both the internal and the external rotators and abductors and adductors all in one big movement pattern, which I think is really fun. But, oh, it works the area too. So let's do 4 more. Okay, last one. All right, so then we're gonna straighten things out. And hopefully, just straightening that out, it feels really good. This is where we're gonna use something under our head. So put something under your head so that you've got a little bit of a support structure, and then bend your knees, which will let this area relax as well. So then all you gotta do is just make sure you're not gonna smack the furniture if you take your arm around in a circle, and then reposition your body as needed. So again, sort of like we did when we lifted the arms up, now we're gonna do it with a circular motion. So we're gonna reach through the arm and keep stretching as you come all the way up and over. You can soften as you get kind of back towards the starting point. So up and over like a big rainbow, and then whoo, the bottom half of that circle's nice and soft. Stretch through the arm. Oh. I'm gonna do 2 more of those. Reaching. Oh, I love these. Oh. And then one more time. Okay. Now I want to pull on my arm. And so to pull on my arm, I'm going to hold on to my big toes. I don't know why I love this pose right now, but I do. So I'm going to grab hold of this big toe, and I'm going to stretch my leg away from me and try to pull on my arm. Now, if you have a strap, if you can't grab your big toe, use a strap or a towel or something, and then just take the leg farther away as you need to keep your hamstrings happy, because you'll pull more on your arms, and if you have longer arms, you might need to do that anyway, so that you can get enough traction. I luckily have longer legs and shorter arms, so this works really nicely. And now I'm just trying to get as heavy as I can here with the rest of my body, as I'm pulling on my arm with my leg. So kind of, you can make this a little bit more fun with your core by just kind of trying to hold yourself steady with your body stretched out. Get to play with your yoga poses all you want. This is how I'm playing with mine. All right, we're gonna take one more breath. Okay, and then we're gonna let this leg go and let go of this whole pose. I'm gonna roll back onto my back. Whew. And just see if the right and left arms kind of feel a little different. It might also have a little different sense in that left leg versus the right leg. So I just did that all with my left leg and my left arm. So I'm gonna switch around and do the other side, because I like to do both sides. This is where I could insert one of my favorite yoga jokes. Aren't you glad you're not an octopus? Because we'd still have 7 more sides to go. Or at least 3 more sides to go, depending on how you look at the tentacles. So I am going to just really quickly, before I go too far, make sure that I am okay to make a big circle. All right. So first, resting my head on my arm, hips on top of hips. Oh, I'm going to extend my legs out and try to find that place where it feels like a little bit of extra work for my core. So again, you could swing the legs forward for less work, try to kind of line them up for a little bit more work. I'm going to let this bottom leg rest, but if you keep your bottom leg hovering, it's even harder. So draw in through the sides of your waist. We're going to do the external rotation so you can feel that little knob on your femur just drops right into your glute, and then circle and try to hold steady. Opposites. We're going to internally rotate right there at the hip, and again I want to notice that little lump right there on the outside of my thighs. If it's there, like, yep, I got it in the internal rotation. And then I'm going to circle, and again I have a harder time keeping this one steady, so I'm really going to focus on hugging the sides of my waist towards each other. So I'm really trying to dig into my deeper abdominals. Just be present for the deliciousness that is slowly unfurling in my inner thighs. 3 more, 2 more, last one, coming back together. Does anybody else love that? Like, love that sensation of like my legs being all fired up. Okay, so I'm getting into place for the little butterfly kicks. So I'm going to open them up, kick that out, come back, and then close it, right? So get all of these movements together, along with this kind of little extra fanfare of the kick. Now, if your knee hurts when you kick out, don't kick out, just hold it. I forgot to mention that earlier. And then also, if this is too intense, you just stop somewhere down the road and rest for a second, right? So you just work with what you got. So I'm gonna try to do 4 more. Last one. All right, so then we come back together. And just for a second, just appreciate kind of fading intensity of that. All right, so this is where I'm gonna need my pillow here, or a block, or whatever, blanket, whatever you got. Okay, so my right arm's gonna kind of hover just about shoulder height. Left arm is kind of just marking my starting point and ending point. So I'm gonna reach through that arm. Yeah, every time I do this, I start, the first one I miss the plants, and then as soon as I start really doing it in earnest, I run into the plants. I'm just gonna fold my fingers in when I get there. So I can still reach through the arm. And each shoulder's a little different, so just trying to be present for what's happening with this shoulder. Expecting it to be like its friend on the other side. One more. Okay, so then I'm gonna get hold of my big toe, and I'm using this again to traction my arm. Now, sometimes it feels nice to me to let my head rest on the pillow. Sometimes I'll take the pillow out, so we'll see how it goes on this side. But I want that feeling of my arm being kind of pulled a little bit. So it's sort of like the shoulder blade, the collarbone, and my arm bone are all kind of being drawn a little bit away from the center of my torso. Away from the ribs and the spine. And I want everything else to just get heavy like sand. That is being pulled that way, but everything else is just softened. Trying to let go into it. So again, it might be better to use a strap or to let the leg get farther away from you so you can get that sort of traction and feel. You are not made like Tyrannosaurus Rex. Leave this girl. Times where the T-Rex has its benefits. Chaturanga is not necessarily one of those dogs, but this one might work. So I'm just giving it a little bit more challenge by kind of lifting the bottom leg, giving my core a little bit of challenge. We're going to do about 3 more breaths here. Trying to keep my neck muscles relaxed. All right, I'm gonna let go, and then come around. And just see where it landed me, because feels kind of good. Right now it feels like my right side is sloping down into the earth, but it will shift. Shift back to normal. All right, so I'm feeling like I'm gonna flip over and do some little cobras and some child's pose and some other things like that. So if you're up for joining me for that, when you're ready, and I'm not rushing you, if you want to hang out there for another breath or two, do that. When you're ready, flip yourself over. spreading my fingers out as pretty wide, starfishy wide, right? I'm not, I'm not gonna get my hands into a position where it feels like there's a strain, but I want a little space in between the fingers. And I'm starting fairly high up, so that even my fingertips are higher than my shoulder line. And that just gives me like a certain range of motion here. So as I lift into cobra and press my legs down, as I pull the collarbones a little wide. This is how we get the name cobra, because we're trying to widen out. Because my hands are forward, they're only going to go so wide, right? So then I come down, slide the hands back an inch, and then when I lift and draw open with the collarbones, there's a different sensation. It gets a little change. I kind of like that opportunity. And then slide them back a little bit. And lift again. And still with the wide fingers for me, and the legs are anchoring, but now I can really broaden across the chest. It feels different. It feels very different. My elbows are closer to me. And then I'm going to slide my arms underneath me like a little sphinx, but keep that about where I had myself lifted. That's about where I want to be. And then drop the chin. And I'm just going to draw a little, like, I'm going to look up over this side and see, can I see my little toes back there? And then come back to the middle. And look up over this side and see, can I see my little toes back there? And so just back and forth, kind of tracing the line of the collarbone with my chin. We've got a little bit of a sphinx and a little bit of a neck kind of thing going on. You can anchor more through your legs, or you can relax your legs. There's both choices. As with all things, there's consequences to our choices, but not necessarily bad ones. So when you're ready, come on out of that. All right, so I'm going to take my hands up kind of wide, and I'm going to come onto the tips of my fingers so I have a little bit more room. Now you might find that it's better if your hands are flat. I've got short arms, so it's a little better to get higher. So I'm going to take the right shoulder forward, left shoulder back. I'm going to turn my head a little to the left, and then I'm trying to slide the right shoulder blade as high as I can, left shoulder blade as low as I can. Come back to the center. Okay? Same idea going the other way. So I'm going to bring the right shoulder blade into the center, left shoulder blade up to the top. Look a little to the right to get my neck out of the way, or head out of the way, so I can really try to draw that shoulder blade in there behind my neck. Coming back, okay? Turn to the left, turn the right shoulder blade up. It doesn't go nearly as far as my left one. And then the left shoulder blade. No judgment on that right side. He's got his reasons. She's got her reasons. I guess it's a she. One more time on each side. Coming on back. All right, release. All right, I'm gonna head back into a little child's pose. Now, I put a little pillow under me. I might get rid of it, but it gives me a sense that I can kind of sink a little bit and turn into wet sand. And you may find that that happens without anything under you, but you can certainly try putting a pillow or so under your chest to let your face and your chest rest on something. Do about 4 more breaths. pose really inviting, and then other times I find that pose quite challenging. It's really interesting to me. A lot of these poses, like that one has always been listed as a resting pose, right? For some people it really is, but other people, not a resting pose. It's quite sharp on the ankles or the knees or the shins. So there's all kinds of ideas that we have about things, right? And what this idea that I have about approaching the practice kind of fresh is that let go of some of those notions. Let's see what happens. So again, this little movement that you might do in your back kind of rote, can you do it with a lot of awareness and presence? And that little sense of curiosity. You can transform this into a down dog if you like. You can transform it into a dolphin if you like. You can just stay with this. Going to walk my hands and widen my feet out a little bit bigger so that I'm in more of a kind of wide angle forward bend shape, and then letting the toes kind of turn where they want to go. I'm just going to sort of shift from one side to the other. It's not as wide as I can go with my legs. It's a little bit, but it's definitely wider than the normal, the average forward bend. How's that? So it's just kind of somewhere in the middle. It's not a big, deep squat, but you can make yours bigger if you want. I'm not in charge of your mat. I'm just exploring. Now, I'm going to come up eventually, but I'm going to come up really slow. And I invite you to decide when you're ready to stand. Meandering my way into a mountain pose. I'm trying to make my mountain pose as receptive as possible. So to do that, I do like a little bit of a bend in the knee, a little bit of a softness at the front of the hip. I really try to just let my arms relax. And it's almost as if, sometimes when I look at people in mountain pose, all I see is armor, like this kind of, you know, and that's, I'm not necessarily physical, but there's this kind of sense of sort of armoring up. Instead, what happens if you invite the pose to just be what it is, right? Maybe it's a little vulnerable today. Maybe it's got armor. Maybe you've got armor today. Kind of rocking your inner armadillo. Maybe you've got little cactus spines today, you're rocking your inner cactus or succulent. What happens if you just put all the armor down and allow yourself to hang out for a moment on your mat in your space with a huge vulnerability. sometimes I have to remind myself, right? Because I like to plan things out and I like to think I'm in charge of what's going to happen, that I can like will things to be the way they are. And then, you know, when you get thrown for a loop or something doesn't work out exactly the way you had anticipated, or things get uncertain, then where are you, right? Where am I? And so I'm just inviting as a practice myself to just be present, because some days I feel pretty invincible and then other days I feel quite vulnerable. And so inviting all of that in, letting it just be part of the experience. The kind of ups and downs and ride that I'm taking in my life right now. All right, I'm gonna go for a Warrior 3 pose. This is, you know, speaking of vulnerability, it's a pose that always makes me feel really vulnerable, and I really have to use this outer hip. So I'm gonna use my right leg first. So I'm gonna stick my left leg back behind me so that it's kind of just riding on the tiptoe here. And then with my chest high, I'm gonna leave my arms kind of back. I'm gonna see if I can just pick that leg up and start there. I wanna keep my hips kind of level just so I have that extra experience of the hip really firing up to hold me. Now if you're a little stronger, come down a little lower as you like. I've been feeling vulnerable for a few days, so it's, you know, definitely feels kind of wobbly. Taking one more breath. I'm just gonna step back, let it land, and then I need a little bit of moisture because my mat is slippery. I'm almost out of water. Okay. So, I landed in a certain way, and more or less I've landed in a kind of Warrior 1 shape, so I'm just going to work with that. If you landed closer to a Warrior 2, work with Warrior 2, right? Whatever pose you've got. Ooh, I'm going to take my arms through a range of motion. Now, I'm going to wrap my arms behind my back. Now, I find that's really challenging to do. And it makes my shoulders feel really bound. So I'm going to use a strap because that gives me some space, right on? So I'm going to kind of face my palms away from me, grab the strap, and then I'm going to fold into this little empty space I've got over here to my left and let the shoulder work happen. So I'm going to move my shoulder blades down and let them come up. Play with it. Play with the legs being straight on both sides, straight on one side. Just let yourself experiment a little bit. Do your thing. Wherever you are landed, just do some things. Now, I'm going to release my arms. And you can hold yours as long as you want. But I'm going to do a slightly different version. So I'm going to straighten this leg eventually. But I'm going to put both my arms out. And almost like I'm in downward dog. I'm just going to lean back. Not quite all the way straight with the legs, but closer to straight. How's that? All the way straight feels a little too much. Take myself around to the front of my mat. Now if you wanted to, you could throw in a vinyasa. You could go to plank, lower down and do an up dog and come back to down dog and then step up to the top of your mat. Again, what's cool about those kind of repetitive motions is it gives you an opportunity to try them with a fresh viewpoint. and then come back to mountain pose and feel that fresh, right? Brand new. And I love the fact that usually there's an asymmetry to my body when I come back, but maybe on one given day there's not a sense of asymmetry, it just is what it is. Okay, so again I'm going to do this, but on my other side. So I'm going to step back with this foot for a moment, so I can kind of start to get myself into this warrior 3 shape. And then I'm just going to pick that leg up and try to hold my hips as steady as I can. And again, you can lower down more so the leg goes up a little higher, or you can hold right where you are. Depends on how things are going. If you fall, catch. Start again. One more breath. I'm going to let myself land. I'm gonna see, we'll just kind of play what I landed on, right? It's like, you know, when you golf, like wherever your ball goes, that's where you play your ball. It's basically the same thing. I'm just gonna play this shape where I landed. So whatever you landed in, play that shape. I am going to do something very similar on both sides, so I'm going to invite myself to try this again. This time I'm going to make one little change. I'm going to turn my palms up instead of in. And see how that goes. Just 2 more breaths. And then I'm going to release the arms. I'm going to go for this kind of downward doggish kind of shape. I'm going to put a little bit of weight in my arms, but not a lot. And then see how straight my legs are willing to go. So, when you're ready, you can either step back up to mountain pose or step back to downward dog. You can throw in a vinyasa sequence if you like. Now, if you stepped up to mountain pose, then take a squatting pose to get yourself to the ground. If you did a vinyasa and you're still in downward dog, you can just melt to the ground like I just did, or you can jump back and bring yourself to the floor. Just come to a seated position. Now, got all this kind of nice sort of looseness happening around my neck and shoulders, so I'm going to kind of carry this with me a little bit, and I'm going to do this breath practice. So if sitting cross-legged on the floor is problematic, like it makes you feel like you're kind of leaning back, sit on the edge of a blanket and sit right on the edge, because it lifts up your sit bones and lets your knees go forward, and it will give you that kind of stability in your spine. So it's really worth it. So, like some of us aren't going to have to worry about that, but you really want to be steady here. So you want to feel like your spine is just kind of easily growing up out of your pelvis, and it's not in any way being kind of forced forward or backward, right on? Now, we're going to do a breath practice that's called Viloma pranayama. Viloma means it's against the grain. So it's sort of like, you know, like petting yourself backwards. Like you pet a cat backwards and their fur goes the wrong way. Like, you know, your hair has a way of growing, and like, you know, things have a way of growing, or muscle has a way of moving, you know, in a certain direction. So this practice is kind of against the natural order of things, is basically the notion. And what we're going to do is we're going to inhale in 3 parts, and in the middle of each part we're going to try to hold the breath for a bit, okay? So we're going to do the holds on the inhale portion. You can also do it the other way around, do them on the exhale portion. We're going to do it on the inhale. So we're going to inhale a third. Whatever we think a third of our breath capacity is, we're going to guess. So we're inhale a third, and then just pause. Now, how long you pause is going to depend on how your body responds, right? So sometimes the body responds almost in a panicky way. Then don't hold it. Don't stay there very long. If you can stay calm and relaxed and relatively comfortable, stay longer, okay? So that's the goal, is to just see how the body responds and decide how long to hold, and then you'll do the next third, pause. We'll do the last third, and the very tippy top, right? When you get to the point where there's like hardly any breath can get in there, just do one more little sip, and then let it all go. Right on? And again, we're gonna try to hold it and keep the body totally relaxed and not tensing up, but notice it. If it does tense up, just notice, just be present for it. So a couple big breaths, and practice letting all the air go. And feel that kind of sense of emptiness, where it almost feels like the belly wants to lift in and hollow. Okay. The diaphragm pulls up so tight that you can feel the kind of response to your internal organs. Again, without straining, we're just letting all the air come out and noticing that sort of signature of all the air coming out. Okay, so now with your next inhale, we're going to do just a third. Right on? And then just pause. And when you're ready, take another third of the breath in. Pause and try to relax a little bit. And then take the last third in when you're ready. Get that little extra sip. And then let it all come out. Just try to let it fall out on its own. Like, you know when you like untie a balloon and just let it deflate on its own? Kind of like that. So there's no forcing to the exhale. We're just letting it slowly come all the way out. Okay, you can do a regular breath in between if that helps. And we're gonna just get curious, like how does this make our body respond? Okay, so when your next breath comes along, you do the practice again. Parts on your own, with your own timing. Basically, I'm just going to do a breath in between each one, and I'm going to do 3 more sets. To go. So I'm going to do one more round, and then I'm going to back to you guys. Now, and this is one of my favorite pranayama practices because it's so interesting to me. Largely because of the sort of changing landscape of it. Like the first third breath is super comfortable to hold. I can hold that forever. Like it feels like I could just keep holding it. And it puts my mind in this very calm, meditative place. And then the second third, my mind starts to get a little agitated. Like it's just like, ooh, what are we doing? And like there's a feeling of where the rib cage kind of gets a little closer to its being a little more fully extended, and I can feel that kind of interesting pressure of the muscles in between the ribs holding that shape. And then at the very tippy top, a little extra, like my shoulders want to creep all the way up to my ears to make room. This is just really interesting to me to play with that breath. And to try to like play with it, like can I stay really super relaxed? What happens if I let myself get a little agitated? What happens if I do it, you know, like when I'm feeling sleepy? What happens if I do it when I'm feeling agitated? It's just really interesting breath to me. So if you didn't like it, I apologize. But you don't have to do it again. It's just, you know, my dealio. But I think it's really interesting breath to kind of notice the responses that we sometimes have, because often when I'm stressed out, I hold my breath accidentally, and it's interesting to notice how, oh yeah, when I have done this Viloma Pranayama in that middle space where I'm holding that like second, like third of the breath, that's the same feeling, that kind of a little bit hyper alert nervous system. It's really, you know, so maybe you can use the breath practice or use the exhale or whatever it is where you kind of catch yourself, right? I think it's interesting. Okay. So I'm doing this little loose butterfly shape with my legs. I invite you to do any shape with your legs that you like. You could do a V, you could do legs out straight. And I'm also kind of noticing and kind of paying attention to my feet for a second. So what I do with the butterfly sometimes, I don't do this all the time, but is to kind of turn the big toe down a bit and to kind of press the little pinky toe mound, this little mound on the side, towards each other. Okay? So it's almost like I've got a really stiff book. I'm trying to open the little stiff book up. Now this is just an interesting shape to put my ankle in, and I don't want to be aggressive. I'm not trying to break my metatarsals on my foot. It's just to kind of, you know, give the ankle joint like a slightly different shape, and to get the metatarsal little movement. When I was doing ankle circles, I noticed I had some stickiness between my middle and fourth toe. And so I'm just kind of playing with that spacing with my fingers. And you could hold, you know, if you're doing a different shape, you could hold onto your big toes and kind of push a little bit on the gas pedal. And then when you're done, kind of feel like you're done, you're ready to come out, and give your legs a little rinse. And then we're going to do something as a final relaxation shape. So you could do legs up the wall. I'm going to do Shavasana with a support under my legs, but you could do a supported bridge pose, anything that kind of feels like a nice kind of way to end your practice tonight. I love Shavasana. It feels really good. And it's sort of like opportunity to just let my body really let go at the end of a practice. I feel the hip flexors once again kind of settle and let go. And sometimes, like I like having a pillow under my legs because it aids me in that sort of low back melting sensation, sort of letting that really relax out of the kind of hyper curve it often has. So for some people, the having something under the legs is problematic, or some people need it like down closer to the ankles. So you can experiment a little bit. Sometimes I like my arms up overhead or more like a cactus. Sometimes down lower feels better. So you can experiment with the arm position. If you don't have a wall handy, but you've got a couch or a chair handy, and you would like to do an inversion, you can put your legs up over the base of the chair, over the seat of the couch. And that's a great way. Like if you have a bed, you can do that. So you just kind of let your legs kind of throw up on top of the, throw your legs up on top and lay on the floor. Practice brought you. So, we just goofed off for a while. We played a little bit with the poses. We did some poses maybe that are kind of familiar. And now we're just going to let it all go. And say a little gratitude thought, a little thank you out there to all the people who brought us yoga practice down through the years. It amazes me that this weird thing that started as this kind of esoteric, philosophical notion somewhere around 5000 BC is the practice that we have today. It's just unreal, the kind of journey that this practice has taken, and the fact that we've got it for ourselves. So a little thank you to all the yogis out there for through the ethers and through the eons that have passed all this down to us. A little thank you to your yoga mat for being here when you need it. And to your own heart for showing up tonight. Can we kind of come to that sense of sort of awe? Sometimes when you get really curious, you wind up with awe and wonder at the beauty that each moment has to offer us. Even in the midst of really difficult times, there can be these little moments of pure beauty and joy. Gently, we're just going to notice that our body's breathing again. Well, I'm going to notice that mine is. I'm assuming you're going to join me. your body's breathing. If you kind of left and went somewhere else with your brain, just come on back. Take a big breath, give yourself a little stretch, maybe some jiggles of fingers and toes and wrists and ankles. You can bring your knees in, give your favorite yogi a little hug, maybe turn it into a little happy baby pose. I remember who it was recently I was talking to who said happy baby pose was, oh, I know it was. It was a guy who said happy baby pose was his favorite yoga pose right now. And I was like, that's cool. I always think guys are going to be like all up into the crow pose and, you know, handstands and stuff that are really powerful. It was kind of fun for somebody to say, yeah, I like happy baby, which is such a vulnerable little pose. I love it. All right, yogis, we're going to sit ourselves up eventually. Now, in the Southwest United States, there are a couple of different Native American tribes that have this notion of a beauty path or a beauty way. And the notion is that the way that we behave in the world either spins in front of us or around us a path of beauty, or it leads us to a different path, right? A non-beauty path. But the goal is to stay on the beauty road. And so there's a little prayer that goes along with that, if that's the right word for it. It goes like this: in beauty I am walking, with beauty before me and beauty behind me, with beauty above me and beauty below me, with beauty all around me. In beauty I am walking. And it's just this little chant or little mantra that you say to yourself, right? So that you remind yourself, oh yeah, in beauty, right? I want to put beauty out in front of me. I want to leave beauty behind me. I want to thank all of the things I perceive as being above me, right? And project a sense of beauty into my crown chakra, into my, you know, higher self, higher being, my relationship to whatever that is. And I want to leave a path of beauty down below me on the earth, right? So I'm going to be kind and gentle with the earth. And then surrounding myself with things that are of beauty, right? So that's the prayer. So in beauty I am walking, with beauty before me and beauty behind me, with beauty above me and beauty below me, with beauty all around me. In beauty I am walking. So I hope you are walking the beauty path as well. Namaste, and for another Native American idea, Mitakuye. We are all related. Mitakuye.